Have you ever noticed something quietly wrong in your neighborhood? A lawn that suddenly goes uncut, mail piling up day after day, lights that never turn on again. At first, you assume there's a reason, a trip, a move, life pulling someone elsewhere. But in 1994 in Westfield, Ohio, in a place where nothing ever seemed to happen, one man didn't leave. He didn't move away. He didn't go on vacation. He didn't tell anyone goodbye. He simply vanished. Douglas Merrick, a 44-year-old man, lived among familiar faces and predictable routines, the kind that make people believe safety is automatic. And then, without noise or warning, he was gone. No disturbance, no struggle, no explanation waiting to be found. Was it someone nearby? Someone he trusted? Or something no one noticed until it was already too late? If stories like this pull you in, subscribe and stay with us. There's a lot more to uncover. The television is still on. Its light jumps across the walls, filling the room with voices meant for someone who never answered back. The volume sits low, deliberate, not an accident, not a mistake. On the kitchen counter, a plate waits, a sandwich, half-eaten, the bread curling, the meat drying where someone took a bite and never returned. This wasn't a meal someone planned to abandon. No plates stacked in the sink, no overturned chairs, no panic frozen into the room. Just a moment that stopped mid-action. And then there's the question no one wants to ask. How does a grown man disappear from his own home in a quiet suburban city that's supposed to be safe? Who took Douglas Merrick? A neighbor who knew his routine? A business partner who knew his problems? Someone owed money? Or someone collecting it? No forced entry, no struggle, no explanation, only absence. His winter coat still hangs by the door, thick, heavy, necessary. That night the cold set in fast. Anyone stepping outside would have reached for it without thinking, but the coat never moved. It stayed right where it was left. His keys are inside, his wallet is inside. Cash still tucked neatly away. People don't leave like this unless they believe they're coming back, or unless they don't get the chance. Nothing was taken, nothing was disturbed. That kind of stillness doesn't calm you, it irritates you, because it suggests no rush, no panic, no resistance. And that's what makes this harder to accept. Whatever happened didn't leave behind chaos. It left behind a life waiting for someone who never returned. Outside, the snow tells a story no one wants to accept. The driveway is smooth, the sidewalk is untouched, the yard looks sealed shut. No footprints leading away, no tracks coming toward the house. The storm didn't just fall, it settled in layers, covering everything evenly, as if the night itself decided to hold its breath. If someone walked away, the ground would have recorded it. If a car pulled up, the ground would have shown it. If there had been panic, the ground would have remembered, but it remembers nothing. That silence doesn't feel natural. It feels final, as if the snow didn't hide what happened. It removed every easy explanation. This isn't confusion. This is the kind of absence that leaves a mark. A man lived here. He ate here. He had plans waiting for the next morning. And now, without warning or explanation, he's gone. No note on the counter, no call made in panic, no goodbye left behind. Just silence sitting where a person should be. That's what makes this hurt. Life didn't fall apart loudly. It didn't explode or collapse. It simply stopped. And the worst part is knowing how easily it happened. Because if a man can vanish like this, quietly, cleanly, without resistance, then safety isn't something you're guaranteed. It's something you assume. Before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoy true crime stories like this, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who'd love it too. Westfield is the kind of place people move to when they're tired of surprises. Streets follow the same paths they've followed for decades. Houses look alike enough that you stop noticing the differences. Neighbors recognize each other's cars before they recognize faces. Nothing feels rushed here. Nothing feels urgent. People leave their doors unlocked. Kids ride their bikes until the streetlights come on. If something unusual happens, it becomes the story of the week. Crime doesn't belong here. At least that's what everyone believes. This town runs on habit, on repetition, on the comfort of knowing tomorrow will look exactly like yesterday. And when a place convinces itself that nothing bad ever happens, it stops paying attention. That belief doesn't just create calm. It creates blind spots. In Westfield, silence isn't uncomfortable. It's reassuring. No sirens cutting through the night. No flashing lights bouncing off bedroom walls. No reason to look twice at a stranger walking past your house. People here mistake quiet for protection. They believe danger makes noise, that it announces itself, that you'll hear it coming. So they stop locking doors, they stop questioning routines, they stop imagining worst-case scenarios, because imagining them feels unnecessary. And when nothing bad happens for long enough, caution starts to feel silly, even paranoid. That's how trust settles in, slowly, comfortably. But silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. It only means no one is watching closely enough to notice. And in places like this, that assumption can be costly. Westfield doesn't think of itself as lucky. It thinks of itself as immune. Bad things happen elsewhere, in bigger cities, in places people warn you about, not here. Here, people believe familiarity equals safety, that knowing your neighbor's name somehow keeps you protected, that shared routines build an invisible shield. But safety built on assumption is fragile. It only works until the day it doesn't. Because when everyone agrees nothing bad can happen, no one is prepared for the moment it does. No one knows what to look for. No one notices what feels slightly off. And when something finally breaks that illusion, the damage is worse. Not because the event was louder or more violent, but because no one was ready to see it coming. Douglas Merrick wasn't just another name on the street. He was the neighbor people trusted without thinking twice. The one who waved first. The one who noticed when something felt off and actually did something about it. If a door didn't close right, Doug fixed it. If a shelf sagged, Doug showed up with tools. If someone needed help moving furniture, Doug didn't ask questions. He had a routine and everyone knew it. Same hours, same truck, same quiet presence. Nothing about him invited concern. Nothing about him suggested risk. That's why his absence hit so hard. Because when someone like Doug disappears, it doesn't just raise questions about what happened to him. It forces you to question how well you really know the people you see every day. Doug's life was predictable in a way people found comforting. He woke up early. He went to work. He came home when he said he would. Neighbors could set their clocks by the sound of his truck pulling into the driveway. His lights went off at the same time every night. His routines didn't change unless something truly mattered. That kind of consistency earns trust. It tells people you're steady, that you won't surprise them, that you're safe to rely on. Doug didn't chase attention. He didn't stir drama. He didn't live in ways that raised eyebrows. He was present in small, dependable ways, the kind that rarely get noticed until they're gone. And when someone like that vanishes, it doesn't feel like bad luck. It feels like a rule has been broken. Nothing about Doug set off alarms. He paid his bills. He showed up when he said he would. He didn't live in ways that made people whisper. There were no public arguments, no sudden changes, no signs that his life was spinning out of control. To the people around him, Doug was stable, grounded, someone who had things handled. And that belief mattered. Because when you trust someone completely, you stop watching closely. You don't question small details. You don't notice when something feels slightly off. You assume tomorrow will arrive the way it always has. That assumption is powerful and dangerous. It explains why no one raised concerns that Friday, why no one checked in that night, why no one noticed the silence until it was too late. That Friday started the way most of Doug's days did. He left the house early, before the street fully woke up. The air was cold enough to bite, but not enough to slow him down. His truck started on the first try, as it always did. Neighbors later said nothing felt unusual. No rushed movements. No tension in his posture. Just the same steady routine they had watched for years. At work, Doug clocked in on time. He spoke with coworkers about normal things, weekend plans, small complaints, nothing heavy enough to linger. If anyone had asked that morning, they would have said Doug seemed fine. That's what makes this part so hard to accept. Because this wasn't a man acting like someone about to vanish. This was a man moving through a day he expected to finish. Sometime late that morning, Doug's routine shifted. It wasn't loud. It didn't draw attention. His phone rang while he was at work. Coworkers noticed the way he stepped away from the floor, his voice dropping when he answered. Not panicked, not angry, just careful. The call didn't last long. When he returned, Doug was quieter, focused. The kind of focused that suggests something is weighing on you, but not enough to explain out loud. He finished his shift. He didn't leave early. He didn't tell anyone he had plans. If the call mattered, he kept it to himself. That detail would bother people later, because routines don't usually bend without reason. And when they do, there's almost always a moment you wish you'd paid closer attention to. This was one of those moments. On his way home, Doug made an encouraged stop. Nothing dramatic, nothing urgent. A hardware store just off the main road, a place he'd been in countless times before. Cameras later showed him walking in alone, calm, unhurried. He bought a small item, something ordinary, something that didn't explain anything. What followed did. After leaving the store, Doug didn't drive off right away. He sat in his truck. 10 minutes passed. The engine stayed off. No calls were made. No one approached the vehicle. Just Doug sitting there, hands on the wheel, staring forward. That pause would come to mean more than anything he purchased. Because people don't sit like that unless they're deciding something, or waiting, or trying to talk themselves into, or out of, a choice they didn't expect to face that day. And whatever happened during those 10 minutes, he carried it with him when he finally drove away. Later that afternoon, someone noticed Doug again. Eleanor, who lived 3 houses down, saw his truck parked along the street. The engine wasn't running. The headlights were off. Doug sat inside, motionless. She almost waved. But something held her back. Not fear, not suspicion, just hesitation. The quiet assumption that whatever was happening wasn't her business. She went inside instead. That moment would replay in her mind for months, because she had seen him, not in distress, not asking for help, just still. And in a town like Westfield, stillness doesn't trigger alarms. It blends in. It passes unnoticed. By the time Eleanor looked outside again, the truck was gone. And that would be the last confirmed sighting of Douglas Merrick. Doug's truck pulled into the driveway before nightfall. Neighbors would later confirm the sound. Familiar, expected, nothing that raised concern. Lights came on inside the house. The television flickered to life. Dinner was started. Every signal said he was home. And yet, that's where the day stops making sense. No calls went out that evening, no messages sent, no plans canceled. When the house finally went quiet, no one noticed. Because quiet was normal here. It never meant danger. This is the moment where answers should exist. Where someone should say, "This is when it happened." But there is no moment like that. Only a normal Friday that reached its end, and a man who didn't reach the next morning. If you're trying to understand how people vanish without a sound, stay close. Missing the small details is how cases like this stay unsolved. That night, the temperature dropped fast. Snow started falling just after dark, steady, quiet, relentless. Not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that settles in and stays. By midnight, the streets were covered. By morning, they looked untouched, smooth, clean, undisturbed. For most people, it was just another winter storm, an inconvenience, a reason to wake up early and clear the driveway. No one knew yet that the weather had just done something else. It closed the door on answers. Whatever movement happened that night, if there was any at all, didn't survive until morning. The ground held no memory, no direction, no hint of where to start looking. Snow didn't cause Doug's disappearance, but it made sure that whatever truth existed wouldn't be easy to find. Later, people tried to remember if they'd heard anything that night, a shout, a car door, raised voices in the cold. But no one could recall a single sound out of place. The snow did what it always does. It swallowed noise, softened footsteps, smothered echoes before they could travel. Windows were shut tight. Heaters hummed. Televisions murmured in the background. Whatever happened didn't announce itself. And that's what unsettled people most. Not that something violent had occurred, but that, if it had, it did so quietly enough to leave no trace in memory. Every neighbor passed the same test and failed it. No one heard Doug leave. No one heard someone arrive. No one heard anything worth reporting. Silence, once again, did the work of concealment. Morning arrived without urgency. The street looked clean. Too clean. Snow covered the driveway in an unbroken sheet, stretching from the sidewalk to the garage door. No footprints leading away. No tire tracks pulling in or out. No marks where someone might have slipped or struggled. It didn't look like a scene. It looked untouched. That's what made it wrong. Doug should have left for work. His truck should have moved. The snow should have told that story. But the driveway stayed sealed. When neighbors later tried to picture how he could have left, they ran into the same wall. Every possibility required movement, and the ground showed none. By mid-morning, concerns started to replace routine. Because the longer the snow sat undisturbed, the harder it became to explain how Douglas Merrick went anywhere at all. When Beatrice arrived, the door opened without resistance, no key needed, no hesitation from the lock. The house greeted her the way it always had. Lights were off, but nothing felt abandoned. The air held warmth, not neglect. The thermostat was set where Doug always kept it. The space smelled lived in, familiar, wrong in a way that's hard to explain. She called his name once, then again. The sound didn't travel far, it fell flat, as if the house refused to carry it. Nothing answered back. This wasn't what she expected to find. Missing people leave signs behind. Panic, mess, something broken. This place offered none of that. Everything suggested Doug had stepped away for a moment, and moments aren't supposed to stretch into forever. Nothing inside the house felt disturbed. Shoes sat neatly by the door. Mail rested unopened on the table. Tools Doug had used earlier were cleaned and put away. It was the kind of order that comes from habit, not effort. The kitchen told the same story, a chair slightly pulled back. A glass left where someone had set it down without thinking. The counter wiped clean, not rushed, not careless. This wasn't the scene of someone leaving in fear. It was the scene of someone expecting to return. Beatrice moved slowly, afraid to touch anything, afraid that if she changed even one detail, the truth might slip further away. Every object felt like proof of normal life, paused mid-motion. And that's what made it unbearable, because chaos would have made sense. Disorder would have explained something, but this house didn't explain anything. It waited. At some point, the house stopped feeling neutral. It began to feel observant. Every room Beatrice entered carried the same quiet question. Why are you here instead of him? The couch still held its shape. The television remote sat where Doug always left it. The hallway light remained on, left that way out of habit, not intention. Nothing demanded attention, and yet everything did. Beatrice stood still, unsure where to look, because every direction felt wrong. The longer she stayed, the heavier the silence became, not empty, pressing. This is where people make mistakes. They assume danger announces itself loudly, that warning signs are obvious, that safety gives notice before it disappears. It doesn't. And if a man can vanish from a house that looks like this, calm, intact, ordinary, then paying attention isn't optional, it's responsibility. Because ignoring the quiet is how people end up explaining too much, far too late. That's when Beatrice understood this wasn't just about Doug anymore. Standing there, surrounded by proof that a normal evening had been interrupted, she felt something shift. The question stopped being, where is he? It became, how easily could this happen again? Nothing in this house warned her. Nothing pushed back. Nothing tried to protect the person who lived here. And that realization landed hard. Because most people live the way Doug did, trusting routine, trusting familiarity, trusting that tomorrow is owed to them. It isn't. If this disappearance feels uncomfortable, it should. It means you're paying attention. And attention is the only thing that gives people a chance when routines fail. If cases like this matter to you, and if staying aware matters, don't wait until it's close to home. Subscribe now, so you don't miss the stories people wish they'd known sooner. By the time Beatrice reached the bedroom, the truth had settled in. Nothing was wrong, and that was the problem. The bed was made the way Doug always made it. His phone charger sat plugged in, unused. The alarm clock was still set for the morning he never reached. No bags packed. no drawers emptied, no sign of preparation. People who plan to leave take something with them. Doug took nothing. That absence pressed harder than any mess ever could. It suggested interruption, not decision. A life paused without consent. Beatrice didn't stay much longer. Some places don't need more time. They've already said everything they were going to say, and this house said one thing clearly. Whatever removed Douglas Merrick from his life didn't just take a man, it took certainty. By the time police arrived, expectations were already forming. People assumed there would be signs, something obvious, a mistake that explained everything. There wasn't. No forced entry, no damaged property, no indication that anyone had fought or fled. The house didn't offer leads. The street didn't offer direction. The snow didn't offer a starting point. Every place investigators normally begin refused to cooperate, and that absence mattered. Because searches rely on disruption, on moments where order breaks. Here, nothing broke loudly enough to follow. What they had wasn't a scene. It was a blank space where answers should have been. And when a case begins like that, it doesn't move forward. It sinks. Cases like this usually follow a pattern, a struggle, a witness, a mistake someone didn't mean to leave behind. That's what everyone waited for. But each hour passed without any of it appearing. No neighbors came forward with something useful, no late-night movements, no arguments overheard, no strange vehicles worth reporting. Even Doug's routine failed to help. His habits were known. His routes were familiar, and yet every place he should have touched that night remained silent. There were no shortcuts in this search, no quick theories to lean on. Only the growing awareness that whatever happened didn't leave behind the kind of evidence people expect when someone disappears. And when expectation fails, doubt takes its place. Not just doubt about what happened, but doubt about how much anyone ever really sees. By the end of the first day, the search had a shape, and it was empty. There were no timelines to tighten, no witnesses contradicting each other, no evidence pulling attention in any direction, just questions stacking on top of silence. Doug didn't match the kind of disappearance people prepare for. He wasn't reckless. He wasn't isolated. He wasn't known for taking risks that end badly, which made this harder to accept. Because if someone like Doug can vanish without resistance, without warning, without leaving even a trace of struggle, then the rules people trust don't mean much at all. As night settled back over Westfield, the search slowed. Not because effort stopped, but because there was nothing left to chase, no trail to follow, no moment to circle back to. Only the growing realization that whatever removed Douglas Merrick did so cleanly enough to leave no scars on the scene. And that raised a more troubling question. Not where is Doug, but how does someone disappear without fighting back at all? That question wouldn't be answered tonight. It would take the case somewhere darker next,